Okay, we're ready. Your Ben Joravsky show for good? Your Ben Joravsky show for Wednesday, July 24th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and helping bring back the Ben Joravsky show. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. Thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. And of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Wednesday, July 24th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, a lot of Muller testimony. Chicago legendary journalist Monroe Anderson returns to talk Muller. Author and professor David Ferris is here to talk Muller. And Sun-Times obit writer Maureen O'Donnell is here to talk Muller? No, she's here to talk about obituaries. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. Yes, indeed, the doctor is right. We're calling this Muller Wednesday. And here's why. Well, woke up bright and early today, D.
What
yes,
time?
and sir, I was up
10:30?
at 9 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
All right?
All right.
Had to hear Muller. Cock-a-doodle-doo. I was up and out of bed. I had my little phone on. I was lying in bed, actually, listening to Muller. And, of course, Muller is, as you all know, the special counsel appointed by the Justice Department to investigate alleged crimes of misdemeanors and felonies by the President of the United States, known as Donnie John Trump, the man you saw fit to elect as your president in America. And as you also know, Mueller and his investigators have, after, a year or so of investigation, have discovered evidence that Trump and his cohorts were meeting with the Russians to get the dirt on Hillary Clinton. And part of that dirt that they got from about Hillary Clinton came from stealing emails from the Democratic computers. No, that's got to be a crime. But they're not going to prosecute because I'm scared to prosecute a president. That's number one. Number two, they also uncovered evidence that Donald John Trump, the man you saw fit to elect as your president of the United States, was trying to talk his cohorts and his allies and his White House aides and lawyers into lying, covering up evidence. I would call that obstruction of justice, D. But did they indict? No. Why? They're afraid. They're afraid to go after the president. I don't blame him. He's a big, powerful guy. He'll write a tweet about you, be scared, hiding under the table. So there's no indictment of Donald John Trump, but there's this big book.
Uh-oh.
The Muller Report, which I've read, which lays out the case against Donald John Trump. And Mueller's saying, well, I'm not going to indict, but if you want to impeach, go ahead. Well, he doesn't literally say that, because here's the thing about Mueller, which is most frustrating. The guy is incapable of offering a declarative, straight-up sentence. So if you say, hey, the sky is blue, he'll say, well, the sky is not blue. Huh? Does that mean the sky is blue? I said enough already. What do you mean?
Depends on what your definition of is. Okay?
Yes. What your definition of is and not. And how many nots before it's not is a not?
I got to go home. I'm lost.
I'm Muller. I'm just going to talk in riddles like a Bob Dylan song. Anyway, I listened to his testimony today. It was fun and interesting. I enjoy watching politicians at work. We're going to play some of the excerpts, get Monroe's thoughts on it, and David Ferris's thoughts on it, and Leah's thoughts on it. Anybody else? Maybe you can drag Maureen O'Donnell into having an opinion on it, though I don't think we'll be having any luck with that. The interesting thing, of course, the Republicans trying to get Mueller to admit, we're biased. Yeah, it's a witch hunt. And the Democrats are trying to get Mueller to say, yes, he should be indicted. Yes, he should go to jail. Or yes, there's terrible evidence here. And Mueller's got, I noticed thing about Mueller, D. We've talked a lot about this down through the months. We listened to politicians in debates, politicians in press conferences, politicians just on, just random interviews. Politicians come into the studio and do the interviews. And there's many different forms of evading an answer, avoiding directly answering a question. There's a duck and a dodge, right? Hey, remember the duck and a dodge where you just sort of say, change the subject really fast and then go on and answer the question you want to answer. There's the deflection, which is sort of the same thing where you just deflect to something else. By the way, I was accused of doing that the other night, D.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
At the White Sox game, yeah. A certain somebody wanted me to smoke a certain something, and instead of giving him a direct yes or no, you know what I did? I ducked and dodged. I deflected.
Nice.
All right, and he accused me you're deflecting. You're like Pritzker.
I hope it was marijuana.
That's what it was. Come on, guys. I haven't smoked since 1981, and I'm not about to start now, even if it is legal. Well, not technically until, January. Anyway, went on a tangent there. I forgot where I was going. Mueller's, what he's really good at, I know there's like two sources. One, his hearing. You know this about Mueller? Huh? What? I can't hear. Can you talk up? What? He needs closed captioning, like me in a movie.
Who said that?
Well, I can't. I'm sorry, guys. I can't hear you. I can't hear. And the other one is he can't remember. How about that, D? Huh? What? I can't remember. I don't know. I can't remember. It's like me the other day, by the way. I must say, I was going to say, I went on a tangent. It's your fault. You put me on the tangent. And then I forgot where I was going when I started, and I dropped the ball on it. When I was talking about young Kenny Davis.
Oh, yeah.
Remember? Because I was talking about...
let's hear that impression of Ken Davis, by the way. Fantastic.
I'll tell you what, Ken Davis always answers a question when you ask him. He's not going to duck. He's not going to dodge. He's not going to say, I can't hear. He's not going to say, I don't remember. He's going to answer the question, right, D?
He may say he can't hear.
What? Anyway, so no, that's one of his favorite things. And then, of course, his ultimate favorite one. That is not the purview of this investigation. I'm not going to answer that one. You can't force me to answer that one.
It was, I'm not going to get into that.
Oh, yeah, I'm not going to get into that. We did a few purviews as well. So I'm not going to get it. Well, you're here to answer a question. Not going to get into that. Very frustrating for me because I wanted a declarative sentence on Donald John Trump's role in what we all know went down. Computers were hacked. The Russians stole information from the Democrats, and they used it against Hillary Clinton. And then there was clear evidence that the president ordered his aides to lie or distort or deceive investigators. How is that not obstruction? How is that not a crime? Well, not going to say. Going to dodge, going to duck, going to mumble, I can't hear a thing you're saying. You know what? They need closed captions for Mueller the next time he comes before Congress. Anyway, the Republicans, I'm sure, are really happy. I haven't seen a guy get away with such crimes since O.J. Simpson. Hey, Republicans, while you're patting yourself on the back, you're playing the role of Johnny Cochran. We got a great show today, everybody. Monroe Anderson will be here in the studio. He's ready to pick apart the Mueller investigation. Also, he's got Epstein updates, and he's going to give us the insight on Trump going to bat for ASAP. Hunty, you're a huge ASAP fan, right?
ASAP Rocky?
Yeah. Monroe is big into rap music. Did you know that?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
He's a hipper and a hopper.
And David Ferris will be here. We love talking politics with David Ferris. He's a Roosevelt University political science professor and author of the book, It's Time to Fight Dirty: How Democrats Can Build a Lasting Majority in American Politics. Yesterday we talked about Nate Cohn, the New York Times reporter who came up with the notion that Donald John Trump would probably lose by more votes this time around than he did in 2016 in terms of popular vote. But his analysis, Cohn's analysis, shows that Trump is ahead in the swing vote in the swing states, and so he'll probably be reelected. And David Ferris has taken a deep dive into all that, into all the polling, and has said Cohn doesn't know what he's talking about. He's already written an article about it, D, so we'll be talking about that, the election ahead, and the strategies that the Democrats should employ if they want to beat Donald Trump, with David Ferris, Roosevelt University political science professor. And then we're going to have Maureen O'Donnell be dropping by to talk about some of the great obituaries she wrote this last week or so. She is one of the great writers in the city of Chicago, writes for this my beloved bright one, the Chicago Sun-Times, and she wrote two excellent pieces. One about Michael Flug, somebody's worth talking about and knowing, who is an archivist here at the Woodson Library on the south side of Chicago. And Lois Willie just died. Lois Willie is a great reporter, great writer, great editorialist. for the Daily News. I believe she worked for the Sun-Times and the Tribune, so she just passed away. Maureen O'Donnell will be in talking about some of the great Chicagoans and plenty of political discussion, local, national, state. Get down to it. But first, the man, the myth, the legend, with the news, Dr. D.
How's it going, everybody? Name's Dennis. It's the middle of the day. Let's talk about the national news happening at the moment. The Mueller testimony.
That was working directly for the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democrat National Committee. They produced the dossier. So they paid Steele, who then went out and got the dossier. And I know you don't want to answer any dossier questions, so I'm not going there. But your report mentions Natalia Vesnitskaya 65 times. She meets in the Trump Tower. It's this infamous Trump Tower meeting. It's in your report. You've heard many of the Democrats refer to it today. The meeting was shorter than 20 minutes, I believe. Is that correct?
I think what we have in our report reflects it was about that length.
All right, that's live, actually, happening right now.
That's classic Mueller.
That was
Thank God. It's in our report.
What? Where am I?
Can't hear you.
So Robert Mueller testified before Congress for hearing number 1. What you just heard was hearing number 2. Two hearings in one day. What did we do to deserve this?
Who is that?
Couldn't tell you. Couldn't tell you. Let's listen again, though.
Would it surprise you that the Clinton campaign dirty ops arm met with Natalia Vesnitskaya more times than the Trump campaign did?
Well, this is an area that I'm not going to get into, as I indicated at the outset.
Yeah.
Did you ever interview Glenn Simpson?
I'm going to pass on that.
All right. A lot of ducking and dodging, baby.
Yeah, well, we hear a lot about this. Can't wait to get Monroe's thoughts on this. This is the Republicans who want to look away from any crime that Donald John Trump did and try to concoct a crime that they could possibly stick to Hillary Clinton. You notice that the dirty ops campaign of Hillary Clinton. And so they're going to be talking a lot about the Steele dossier. There were so many questions put at that, as though somehow or other this entire investigation, there was nothing resembling, a reason why the investigation went down. It was just all based on a dossier by an operative in England named Steele. And so that's what the Republicans are determined to do, and try to dismiss the entire Mueller report, the entire investigation, as just the byproduct of Hillary Clinton dirty ops.
So while hearing number 2 is taking place, let's unpack hearing number 1, shall we? So obviously the Democrats and Republicans had completely different strategies in speaking with the former special counsel today in regards to his evidence found in his Russia election collusion investigation. The Democrats' plan, well, that's have Mueller confirm and repeat the evidence and statements found in that gigantic book that Ben always brags about reading all the time, the Muller Report. Is that correct, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. And their plan is also to remind everyone that's watching that Mueller is a very credible guy, not a lunatic. Is that correct, Mr. Mueller?
That's correct.
By the way, it's my new favorite clip. Mr. Mueller, you seem a little tired this morning. Did you? Are you tired?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Really?
Are the Bulls going to win the championship this year, Mr. Mueller?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Whoa.
Oh, here's your guy. So I tried finding audio of the Democrats during the testimony. Couldn't find any, but boy, I got a lot from the Republicans. Good Lord. And as far as the Republican strategy in this, by the way, in grilling Mr. Mueller, well, that's easy. Get Mueller to admit that he hates Donald Trump and always has. Is that correct, Mr. Mueller?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome.
Wait a minute.
Oh, he's leaving. Hold on.
Said in the day in response.
Okay, that's CNN. We don't want to play their audio. Anyway. All right, so I guess they're maybe taking a recess. Mueller resumes testimony before Congress. Maybe they're taking a recess.
He's exhausted, all right?
Are you exhausted?
That's correct.
Oh, okay. Well, take a break. Take a break. You seem like a chocolate milk guy. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, take a chocolate milk. That's fine. All right, and
will you be seeing Once Upon a Time in America this weekend?
Correct.
He loves that movie. All right, so let's hear the Republican responses here. First up, this guy's a piece of work. Louis Gohmert.
Oh, yeah, the guy from Texas.
Oh, man, belongs in Mayberry. Here we go.
Well, listen, regarding collusion or conspiracy, you didn't find evidence of any agreement, I'm quoting you, among the Trump campaign officials and any Russia-linked individuals to interfere with our U.S. election, correct?
Correct.
So you also note in the report that an element of any of those obstructions you referenced requires a corrupt state of mind, correct?
Corrupt intent, correct.
Right. And if somebody knows they did not conspire with anybody from Russia to affect the election, and they see the big Justice Department with people that hate that person coming after them, and then a special counsel appointed who hires dozen or more people that hate that person, and he knows he's innocent. He's not corruptly acting in order to see that justice is done. What he's doing is not obstructing justice. He is pursuing justice. And the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
I take your
Gentleman's
question.
time has expired. The witness may answer the question.
All right, round one over.
Wait, time out. What was the question? That was a tough one. The guy gave a speech, but there was no question. That was another thing I noticed. Mueller was like, what's the question? Which, by the way, I could relate to, because Democrats and Republicans, they would just start talking. They want to get their talking points in, D. In that case, the talking point was that the Donald Trump and his aides are as innocent and pure as freshly fallen snow, and the Democrats are mean and dastardly. That was the point, okay, D? That was and poor Mueller's like, what? First of all, he couldn't follow where the guy was going. Then you got to have some kind of thing answer that responds to the question. But if there's no question, what's the question?
All right, so that was Gohmert's take.
Gohmert, what a character.
Oh, wait, there's one. Oh, by the way, David Gohmert, for all the movie buffs out there, if there's ever a movie about David Gohmert, David Koechner would be a great person to play.
Which one's David Koechner?
Bald head.
What movie was he in?
Comedian, comedy actor. Can't really think of any movies he's in particular. You would know him if you saw him,
okay.
though. But anyway.
Gohmert, man.
All right, so we got...
Do your Gohmert imitation.
Oh, now, come on. Sounds like Alligator Bob.
Yeah, alligator. By the way, did he get trounced?
Okay, that's enough alligator talk.
I like it.
All right, so that was Louis Gohmert. Up next, Republican North Dakota Rep. Kelly Armstrong. Boy, he was feeling himself today.
Mr. Mueller, this isn't just about you being able to vouch for your team. This is about knowing that the day you accepted this role, you had to be aware no matter what this report concluded, half of the country was going to be skeptical of your team's findings. And that's why we have recusal laws that define bias and perceive bias for this very reason. 28 United States Code 528 specifically lists not just political conflict of interest, but the appearance of political conflict of interest. It's just simply not enough that you vouch for your team. The interested justice demand that no perceived bias exists. I can't imagine a single prosecutor or judge that I have ever appeared in front of would be comfortable with these circumstances where over half of the prosecutorial team had a direct relationship to the opponent of the person being investigated.
Let me one other fact that I put on the table, and that is we hired 19 lawyers over the period of time. Of those 19 lawyers, 14 of them were transferred from elsewhere in the Department of Justice. Only 5 came from outside.
And so half of them had a direct relationship, political or personal, with the opponent of the person you were investigating. And that's my point. I wonder if not a single word in this entire report was changed, but rather the only difference was we switched Hillary Clinton and President Trump.
Oh my God. Just imagine that. If we switched Hillary Clinton and Donald John Trump, oh boy, what was the dude from Texas?
Gohmert.
Could you imagine Gohmert if it was Hillary Clinton's people who had met with the Russians? If it was Clinton's people who took that dirt that the Russians got from the computers and spread it here, near and far? If it was Hillary Clinton who was telling her people, hey, lie, distort, deceive. How about this, Gohmert? If it was Hillary Clinton's people that were paying off, strippers who had an affair with Bill Clinton? Could you imagine what the Republicans would be doing there? Oh, my God. Good God.
By the way, this is David Koechner. I'm going to jump up and show you real quick.
Oh,
The guy
okay.
looks like Gohmert.
All right. To quote D, great moment in podcasting here, ladies. Oh, yeah, I've seen that guy in a lot of, yep. Show it.
Oh, okay. Look up David Koechner. You're on the line.
I can almost hear his voice in my
Right?
in my mind. Yeah.
All right, so that was what was that guy's name? Kelly Armstrong. What'd you think of Kelly Armstrong there? Huh? Would you invite him to dinner any day soon? No. Okay.
What a guy. Oh, how so unfair for Donald Trump. By the way, and he opened up by saying half of the country would be skeptical. Negatory, sir. Actually, less than half of the country voted for Donnie John Trump. So I think most people in this country, just if you just asked them, yeah, he was up to no good. Yeah, he was colluding with the Russians. Yeah, he took those emails. People know that. Then then the issue gets in, well, how far do we push it? And that's when Americans think, it's like, I don't know. It's just so unsettling. I don't know. They get that, I'm afraid to go too far. But yeah, I would say that not half the country's skeptical. Like your base, I wouldn't even call them skeptical. They're just outraged that anybody would investigate Donnie John Trump.
All right, so we heard Louis Gohmert. We heard Kelly Armstrong. Step aside, fellers. It's time for this guy that I've seen on TV too much in the last few weeks. It's this guy, Jim Jordan, Republican here. He's going after Mueller as well. Let's hear from Jimmy J.
Jimmy J.
Now, here's the good news.
Okay.
Here's the good news.
All right. Trump
President was falsely accused of conspiracy. The FBI does a 10-month investigation, and James Comey, when we deposed him a year ago, told us at that point they had nothing. You do a 22-month investigation. At the end of that 22 months, you find no conspiracy. And what's the Democrats want to do? They want to keep investigating.
Wait, that's good news?
They want to keep going. Maybe a better course of action is to figure out how the false accusation started.
Ooh, here we go.
Maybe it's to go back and actually figure out why Joseph Nipson was lying to the FBI. And here's the good news.
Okay.
Here's the good news.
All right, finally.
That's exactly what Bill Barr's doing. And thank goodness for that. That's exactly what the Attorney General and John Durham are doing. They're going to find out why we went through this three-year saga and get to the bottom of it.
Time of the gentleman is...
Wrap it up, Jim.
Jim Jordan. I kept waiting for the good news. What's the good news? Yeah, Barr's going to do an investigation of the investigation. All right, folks? Yeah. They watch. They're going to go so hard at the Hillary. They're going to keep coming after Hillary Clinton, who wasn't even allowed to be the president, even though she got most of the votes. They're going to figure out some way to blame this whole thing on Hillary Clinton. That's the good news. Yeah, okay, Jordan. It's hard to see the evidence, Jordan, when you got your eyes closed.
That's correct.
All right, and the big takeaway from hearing number one, hearing number two taking place now, and the big moment was thanks to the Republicans. Oops. And one in particular, a Colorado Republican by the name of Ken Buck.
Okay, Kenny B.
All right, Kenny B. He had Mueller confirm that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, could be charged with obstruction of justice after he left office. Let's hear from Ken Buck.
You charge the president with a crime after he left office?
Yes.
You believe that you could charge the president of the United States with obstruction of justice after he left office?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Is Buck outraged by that? I get this feeling that, wow, this is just an outrage. Hey, Buck, if he obstructed justice, and it sure looks like he obstructed justice, he should be charged. I don't know. Just saying.
That's correct.
All right.
All right, so there you go. That's hearing number one. We'll be keeping you posted on hearing number two as today's program rolls along. I'm sure Monroe Anderson's just ready to riff on this as well.
We got to play those tapes from Monroe, get his response to Jordan and your guy. What's his name from Texas? But the
Gohmert?
Gohmert, yeah.
Louis Gohmert. Oh, yeah.
Louis Gohmert.
So before we get into all things Mueller, like we've been doing here, we're going to take a brief break. And after that break, we're going to find out what's going on locally. We're going to find out what else is news. So people, don't go anywhere. You're listening to The Ben Joravsky Show. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, indeed. We are live from the Chicago Sun-Times, the Chicago Reader, Chicago Sun-Times studio, I should add. All right. Remember yesterday we had little problems there. BGA with their story, the Chicago Sun. It is a joint program.
Don't get me upset about that again, okay? I just got
that
over
was
it.
the Kenny Davis thing. Can I just go back to the Kenny Davis? That's why I mentioned him in the first place. And you distracted me with a request to do an imitation of young Ken Davis. And the point is that the BGA wrote that story about the falsehood uttered by Susanna Mendoza on this show. And I said I felt like Ken Davis because it was on Ken Davis's show where Lori Lightfoot made her comments about the Fraternal Order of Police, or the police, not the police department, policemen allegedly taking sick leave days. I can't remember what the exact allegation was. And everybody was going around the Ken Davis show. It was on the Ken Davis show. And remember, Ken said he was a little embarrassed and uncomfortable that he had such a prominent role in that revelation. I, on the other hand, was just really relieved that they spelled my name correctly in this story. Yeah, so good job by the BGA on the spelling there. All right, that's why I mentioned Ken Davis.
Let's hear that impression one more time. Hot damn, that's good. No words said, but still a good
Young
impression.
Kenneth will be coming in, I think, next week. Yeah, next Friday. I can't remember which.
It's Friday. All right, we're about to find out what's going on locally.
Get the brain on Brad.
It's time for What Else Is News. And, well, it's a follow-up on the story that's been following our mayor since she became the mayor. It's time for another installment of A Mayor and Her Alderman. Oh, boy. Lori Lightfoot and these aldermen, I tell you. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and the one and only Fran the Woe Man Spielman. What?
A mayor and her alderman. It's a good one, man.
It's the hit show. It's going around in Chicago.
That doctor, I tell you, he comes up with this stuff every day, ladies and gentlemen.
Indicted Alderman Edward Burke. Of which ward, Ben?
14th. Come on.
Huge dork, guys. He has a choice to make in 90 days now that the city council has unanimously approved the latest in a seemingly endless string of ethics reforms. The city council meeting was this afternoon in Chicago, by the way. The revised ordinance championed by Mayor Lightfoot states, quote, no official or employee may derive any income, compensation, or other tangible benefit from providing opinion evidence as an expert against the interests of the city in any judicial or quasi-judicial proceeding before any administrative agency or court. Now, I'll go ahead and speak on behalf of the people listening here. Ben, what the hell was that?
Yeah, man, that one is, wow. Again, I was hard on Muller for being unable to say something straightforward and right out there that you all understand it. And,
That's correct.
Yeah, that is correct, Muller. The city did it there. Okay, here's the situation. Ed Burke, one more time, everybody, has a property tax appeal business. He's also the chairman, or was the chairman of the City Council Finance Committee. He's also a voting member of the City Council, alderman of the City Council from the 14th Ward. As chairman of the Finance Committee, he oversees the approval of every single contract and every single budget, every single TIF deal. All right. So his role is supposedly to be looking out for the fiduciary interests of the taxpayers.
Love that word.
I know. I love fiduciary. But in his role as a property tax lawyer, he's looking out for the best interests of his client. So if he gets, let's say Leah hires him to get her taxes reduced, if he's successful in getting her assessment lowered and she pays less in taxes, that means all the rest of the taxpayers pay more money. So he's looking out for the interests of his client, in this case Leah, but all the rest of the taxpayers, including Dennis, me, Brian, the brain who oversees the entire operation here, Monroe Anderson, who will be coming in, David Ferris, who will be coming in, Maureen O'Donnell, who's be coming in. All these other taxpayers lose. So instead of looking out for the taxpayer, he's looking out for his client. He's also looking out for himself because the client is paying him. Okay? That's what we call a conflict conflict of interest. It's existed for years and years and years, D. People like me have been railing and ranting about it. I go back to articles I wrote in the 90s on this subject. The city of Chicago's attitude for most of that time was, what do you got to be? Why are you complaining so much, man? I got my garbage picked up. I'm happy. Well, things have changed here in the city of Chicago.
Who's that an impression of? Neighbor?
Just the general public there.
Oh, okay.
There was a neighbor once I had who was like, I know how to get the snow removed, okay?
Oh, yeah?
He'd like drop his voice. We'd meet on the sidewalk. I know the alderman. Guy, you're supposed to get your snow removed because you paid taxes. Did you ever think of that? No. I know the alderman. That's the Chicago
It's
man.
creeping me out. The impression of that guy's creepy.
I know the alderman.
Please
okay?
stop.
Don't worry about it. We're going to get our snow removed. Anyway, so back to Burke. So finally, I don't know what happened in the city of Chicago this last election. Suddenly people woke up and decided we are not going to put up with these conflicts of interest anymore. It caught Tony Preckwinkle off guard. Lori Lightfoot, running as an outsider, was not the recipient of these, the beneficiary, I should say, of these conflicts of interest, made it a campaign. And guess what? Part of her campaign is she won. So now she's following through on it. And so finally, it seems as though the city council is going to prevent aldermen from having this kind of direct conflict of interest where they are individually benefiting from giving advice or representing taxpayers or before like the Cook County assessor or the Cook County Board of Review to get their taxes lowered if that works against the larger interests of the city of Chicago. So about time, I say.
The Sun-Times article continues. The alderman who stands accused in a 14-count racketeering indictment of using the city as a, quote, criminal enterprise to squeeze businesses to hire his law firm has been forced to choose. Stop handling property tax appeals, divest himself from Clafter and Burke, or step down as alderman. If he does none of those, he would face daily fines up to $5,000 for each offense.
Wow.
Now, Ben, get this. You're going to find this hard to believe. Burke could not be reached for comment on his intentions.
Really? Was he? Does it say? I've been in the studio, so I don't know if he was at the meeting. Does it say if he was at the meeting? I don't know. Yeah. So that's putting the pressure on him again. He has to step down from the law firm or step down from the city council. What a choice! I don't know which one would want to make in that case, because he probably makes more money from being the lawyer than he does from being the alderman. So he's a tough choice ahead of him. By the way, one of his clients, like to point out, was the Trump building. All right, the Trump family, owners of the Trump building. Well, actually, I don't know who technically owns the Trump building. It's got Trump's name splashed on it, as you like to remind me every time we go by it on the Brown line, which is really hard to miss anyway. Ed Burke represented Donald Trump. How about that, folks? That's how much things have changed in this town, in politics, really, just in the last couple of years. Ed Burke openly represented the Trump building. Every year he would go before the Cook County assessor, the county, to get their assessments lowered, arguing that they shouldn't have to pay higher taxes. They should get a reduction in their taxes because they can't fill the commercial spaces that are vacant on the ground floor, the lower levels of the Trump Tower. And I have always argued that part of the reason they can't fill those spaces is that no reputable person would want to rent there because it's got Trump's name splashed on the front of the building. So that if they want to get a reduction, they should be forced to take that name off the building, and then let's see if they can rent their vacant space. And of course, nobody listened to me in that argument either. The Cook County assessor didn't buy my argument either.
Why didn't anyone listen to you?
I don't know why, but so in that, but for 2 years he did that, and finally Trump became such a bad name in the city of Chicago, and particularly in Hispanic or Latino communities, because of his border policies, that Ed Burke was forced to drop Trump as a client, drop the Trump Tower as a client. And I don't know, maybe that was part of the reason why he was reelected in, 2019, just this last February. He was reelected, even though he was facing criminal charges. He was the subject of a criminal investigation. Or though it could have been the typical attitude of the Chicago voters, D, who said, I know the alderman. I got my street.
Oh, that's that neighbor again.
I got it.
Oh, that creepy neighbor that Ben has.
No collusion.
No. So anyway, that is Ed Burke. He's being forced to choose.
All right, the article continues here. Looks like Monroe is making his way up to the building, so we'll finish this article out here. Alderman Patrick Daley Thompson. Ben, which ward?
11th. Come on.
My God. Hanging out with nephew and grandson of Chicago mayor said the new ordinance poses no such conflict for him. He handles property tax appeals, but only outside the city. Alderman Ray Lopez, who I know a certain guest isn't a fan of. Alderman Ray Lopez said the language does not go nearly far enough. It's Ricky Hendon, by the way, that guest. At Wednesday's city council meeting, he introduced an ordinance that would prohibit all outside employment and mandate that aldermen serve their constituents full time.
Oh, so wow, Ray Lowe, who was sort of an ally of Ed Burke's, taking the even more. That is a good argument. With the aldermen make, I think, $114,000 a year. D, I'm doing it off the top of my head. Should they be prohibited from having any outside employment, even like driving an Uber or a Lyft? I mean, should they just be prohibited and forced to work full time as an alderman? I think that's too extreme. How about that? I just think that if an alderman wants to have a side job that doesn't conflict with what he or she does as an alderman, he or she should be allowed to do it.
A side hustle alderman.
A side hustle alderman. But clearly, running a property tax appeal business in the city of Chicago, representing the interest of downtown commercial owners, getting them reductions in their taxes, which force the taxes of everybody else to go up, that would be a conflict of interest. And I don't think the ordinance that forces aldermen to recuse themselves from votes go far enough, particularly in the case of Ed Burke. He would say, well, I didn't vote on this measure. It's still, he's still a very influential alderman in that he oversees the flow of legislation. So I don't think the recusal goes far enough. I think we should outlaw prohibit aldermen from having property tax appeal businesses in the city of Chicago.
The ordinance approved today by a 50-0 vote. Also
50-0?
50-0.
Well, then Burke had to be there, and he had to vote for it.
All right.
50-0?
That's correct.
Okay.
And it also empowers Inspector Joe Ferguson to enforce his own subpoenas, grants him full auditing and investigatory oversight over the city council, and authorizes investigations up to 5 years after an offense occurs instead of just 2 years after an alleged violation. It raises the maximum fine for, quote, high-level ethics violations to $5,000, up from the $2,000 recently levied against Burke, though the Board of Ethics had recommended $20,000. The $500 limit for low-level violations would double to $1,000, and it broadens the definition of lobbyist to include nonprofits, but waives their registration fees and pushes the effective date to January 1. Only those, quote, paid or otherwise compensated would be required to register.
Yeah, it's getting pretty confusing out there, but the bottom line is this. In my humble opinion, aldermen should not be property tax lawyers, okay? That would just be number one thing that I would do. And I don't think aldermen should be lobbyists either, D. They should have to drop their lobbying businesses. Even though, well, we're not lobbying in the Chicago City Council. We're lobbying downstate. Well, conflict of interest, like businesses coming to you, asking you to lobby on their behalf. I think that aldermen should get out of the lobbying game, at least while they're sitting aldermen. So it's about time that this legislation took place. I'm not sure it's going to eradicate all corruption in the city of Chicago. Corruption, of course, has been around a long time and it'll take many different forms. But I think it's a good start. So good for the city of Chicago. Let's give the voters the credit for this one, D, because they're the ones who sort of woke up on this issue in this last election and elected Lori Lightfoot, largely because they wanted a change.
So there you are. The latest installment of A Mayor and Her Alderman. Love that show. And now you'll have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news?
All right, let me tell you something. Lori Lightfoot,
okay,
Ed Burke, and Robert Muller all agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We'll be right back with Monroe Anderson after this. Hey, playing now at Steppenwolf Theater, the world premiere of Ms. Black for President. It's inspired by the true, that's true as in it really happened, TRUE story of Joan Jett Black, America's first drag queen presidential candidate. You know who created it, D?
No.
It was created by Tony nominee Tina Landau.
Oh.
And you know who else created it?
No.
Oscar winner Terrell Alvin McCraney. You know him, Moonlight.
Oh, yeah.
For tickets, visit steppenwolf.org. That's Steppenwolf, like the rock group from the 60s.
Hang tight, millennials. The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by the Northwestern Summer Writers Conference. Now in its 15th year, the 3-day conference held in Chicago features a diverse array of workshops, speakers, discussions, and readings. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/writers. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Ben, get over Monroe's shirt, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Every now and then, somebody comes into the studio wearing something that I'm immediately jealous that I don't own. And Monroe Anderson is wearing this super cool, like, Hawaiian shirt. As soon as he walked in, I'm like, I want that shirt. So anyway, nice shirt. Did you buy it or did Joyce buy it for you?
Oh, Joyce doesn't shop for Joyce. No. I bought it.
Oh, see there, I was stereotyping you because you're a man. I figured you were like me. You couldn't shop, and you wanted your wife to shop, but no, you're
the only loser here. Now, it's funny because during the break, people could see it on the live stream. He's wearing a shirt, and Ben asked Monroe, "Man, is that reefer on his shirt?"
Wait, people heard that?
No, they could see his shirt.
Oh,
though.
yeah. Well, no, I asked him if it was reefer or a palm tree, and
Ben is counting the days down to January 1.
Apparently.
Actually, that is not. First of all, I just have to point this out here. It is January 1. But I was at that White Sox game the other day, and I have to tell you this, Monroe, in the parking lot of White Sox Park, yes, indeed, people were indulging before it was January 1.
Contact high time. Huh?
Man, I people were trying to get me to do it, but I wouldn't do it, Monroe, because I've just stopped. I haven't done it since 1980 or 81. Anyway, it's a great shirt.
You tried it, but you didn't inhale.
Like your boy, Billy C. I did not inhale. All right, Monroe, so much to talk about with Mueller's testimony today, if you call whatever he did testimony. But Leah, our editor, posed a very good question when we were at break, and I said, you know what? I want you to pose that question to Monroe Anderson and get his response to it. So, Leah, take it away.
It seems like Democrats and Republicans have completely different interpretations of the Mueller report. Like, Democrats say, oh, this is evidence that Trump has committed wrongdoing, and Republicans say, no, it's evidence that he didn't. And Mueller won't even say that what it's evidence for. So why do people have completely different interpretations?
Monroe Anderson.
Trump is a liar and the Republicans are lying. Okay, part one. With Mueller, he's trying to walk that fine line between being objective and fair and not lying at the same time.
See, that's the part that the notion of objectivity, you just raised that point, objective and fair.
Right.
I mean, he is a special counsel. He issued a report. He has actions that he has laid out, that what Trump did and what Trump's aides did.
Right.
I don't think it's being unfair to clearly state whether those are crimes. I think that's just evasion, ducking, and dodging. The notion of being objective and fair, I don't know how that applies to this, as opposed to an evasion.
Well, you haven't heard part two. The Intel Committee, that's going on right now. And we have a new improved Mueller at the stand now.
Oh, see, that's happening as we speak?
That's happening as they're talking about Russia. And he said it had to be drawn out of him. But he said that the Russians helped Trump, that Trump welcomed that assistance. They went through a whole thing which basically said that Trump was not quite exonerated of this, and that Russia is a major problem that's not being handled.
All right, that's happening right now.
Yes.
So
it was quite different because this morning he was ducking and dodging. He's trying to be fair, objective and fair.
Fair, and by the way, in air quotes.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Because I don't even know what objectivity means in relation to the Mueller report. It either is or it isn't. Donald Trump either asked his lawyers to lie, or he didn't ask his lawyers to lie. Mueller says he did ask them, so I don't know how it's being objective and fair not to clearly state that when you're asked about it, and that's I think what Leah's getting at.
Yeah, no, he was a problem this morning. He was way too cautious. He was very boring. He's more animated now. Although he's not tap dancing or hip hopping or anything like that, but he's more animated and, Schiffer. Who's the head of it? Schiffer or Swalwell? Which one? Who's the head of the House Intel Committee? Anyway, they're much better than Nate Nadler was.
Jerry Nadler. Yeah, the congressman. Yeah.
He's much better. It's one of the California. Anyway, the head of it. I'm blanking on his name right now.
All right, let's. We're gonna have some fun with this. We have some of the Republican congressmen and their interrogation of Mueller. Love to hear your response. So we can play. D, which one are you going to do first?
We'll spit in the wheel and we'll.
Any one of them is hilarious for Monroe's response.
But we do have updates on the second hearing going on now. It says here that Mueller has confirmed in response to a question from Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell that the special counsel's investigation was hampered by Trump campaign officials' use of encryption communications. Mueller replied, "We believe that to be the case." Actually, it looks like we have audio here from Swalwell.
He got it. Yeah,
we believe that to be the case.
Right.
That's just there. You go. Yes would be better. Yes.
All right, here's Swalwell.
The president's campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, lied about meetings that he had with someone with ties to Russian intelligence. Is that correct?
That's true.
And your investigation was hampered by Trump campaign officials' use of encryption communications. Is that right?
We believe that to be the case.
You also believe to be the case that your investigation was hampered by the deletion of electronic messages. Is that correct?
It would be, yes. Generally, any case would be if those kinds of communications are used.
For example, you noted that Deputy Campaign Manager Rick Gates, who shared internal campaign polling data with the person with ties to Russian intelligence at the direction of Manafort, that Mr. Gates deleted those communications on a daily basis. Is that right?
I take your word. I say I don't know specifically, but if it's in the report, then I support it.
That's right, Director. It's Volume 1, page 136.
Thank you.
In addition to that, other information was inaccessible because your office determined it was protected by attorney-client privilege. Is that correct?
That is true.
That would include that you do not know whether communications between Donald Trump and his personal attorneys, Jay Sekulow, Rudy Giuliani, and others discourage witnesses from cooperating with the government. Is that right?
I'm not going to talk to that.
See, okay, this gets to what Leah was asking. What the Democrats are doing is literally like going to the Mueller report, reading the Mueller report.
Exactly, and he refused to read it. They asked him on more occasions than one to read it, and he says, "I prefer you read it."
Yeah,
because he doesn't want to be on tape.
Reading his report, which has his name on it.
Right.
And then
but he doesn't want to be a prop for the Democrats. And there's one key component here that is the elephant in the room. Mueller is a Republican.
Yeah.
And he's been a Republican. He didn't get converted. He's not a never Trumper. And so he is what he is. A Republican.
Yeah, he's a Republican, and he also is determined, and your point's a good one, Monroe. He's determined not to get in the middle of the Democratic and Republican squabble over Trump, and that enables the Republicans to do what Leah said, put a completely different spin on his own report.
Yeah, but that's him, period. This is his 89th time appearing before the House or the Senate in a hearing. 89. And they have tapes of him going back for years, and he's always basically been the same. Not very talkative, not very emotive, pretty boring.
Yeah. I don't know. What. Just before we go to this tape, do you think it was a good idea for the Democrats to call him as a witness?
This morning, I thought it was a disaster. Hearing what he said so far in this one, it's going to work out.
All right.
It's going to work out.
And we got more updates here, too. Mueller described Trump's 2016 praise of WikiLeaks as, at the very least, problematic. Hey, Representative out of Illinois, Mike Quigley, documented the many instances of Trump applauding the website after it leaked emails from the Democratic National Committee during the 2016 campaign. We have audio of that as well. Take it away, Mike Quigley.
Just came out, WikiLeaks. I love WikiLeaks. Donald Trump, October 10th, 2016. This WikiLeaks stuff is unbelievable. It tells you the inner heart. You got to read it. Donald Trump, October 12th, 2016. This WikiLeaks is like a treasure trove. Donald Trump, October 31st, 2016. Boy, I love reading those WikiLeaks. Donald Trump, November 4th, 2016. Would any of those quotes disturb you, Mr. Director?
I'm not certain I would say.
How do you react to that?
It's probably problematic is an understatement in terms of what it displays, in terms of giving some, hope or some boost to what is and should be illegal activity.
Okay, one more time. The WikiLeaks stuff was stolen from the Democratic computers. See, Leah, that's right there. The man won't make a declarative sentence. He won't come out and say something that we know happened, and that enables. Most people aren't paying attention, as you know, Monroe.
Right.
And that enables Republicans just to
lie.
Yeah, we'll get to lie, and that's why. Somebody could do like Leah said. It's like two different reports.
Yeah, no, I think we'll see, but I think when this is over and done today, we're going to go fairly quickly into impeachment inquiry. They have no option.
They being the Democrats. We're going to talk about that with David Ferris.
Yeah,
we'll be getting into that because that's Ferris country as to whether the Democrats should impeach.
And, we have one more update. Isn't that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
Oh, that's correct. Okay. Let's see here. Mueller has asked what he wants the American people to get out of his report. He was asked this by Representative Jackie Speer, California Democrat. Here we go.
This was...
On behalf of the American people, I want to give you a minute and 39 seconds to tell the American people what you would like them to glean from this report.
Well, we spent substantial time assuring the integrity of the report, understanding that it would be our living message to those who come after us. But it also is a signal, a flag to those of us who have some responsibility in this area to exercise those responsibilities swiftly and don't let this problem continue to linger as it has over so many years.
What problem was he specifying that would be lingering over all these years, Monroe? Do you know?
Putin.
Okay. I mean, first of all, she gave him a minute, 39 seconds. I was going to time it. I think he took like 20 seconds tops.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm not impressed with Mueller as a witness.
Now, this is the problem. Mueller is old school. He's 1960s and where are we? 2019.
Yeah.
He's not media. He's not camera ready. He's not tweetable. He's in a different century, another millennium.
And you could have left school out of that sentence.
I would have said, I would take old school out of it because you're denigrating a lot of great old school people they know that tell it like it is. That was a song from back in the day, an old school song. Tell it like it is. Say something and say it in language that people can understand. Oh, mumble and mutter.
He's Seinfeld. It's an investigation about nothing.
It's an investigation, but there is something in that investigation.
Oh no, he actually he sort of admitted he sort of referenced some of that, and what the Democrats did was read off his convictions and who was convicted. You know, they spoon feeding.
Yeah, no, they spoon fed him.
And in the meantime, I mean, what's really interesting is the Republicans are pushing their theory about the Clinton campaign.
Yeah.
Actually being the villains.
Yes, we were talking about that one.
Yeah. So literally they are using their time to talk about what the Democrats did.
Yeah.
To get Trump elected.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's the problem with that. This is grand conspiracy by the Democrats that assured that Trump would get elected.
And we got one more update from hearing number 2 before we start playing the clips from hearing number 1 here.
All right.
Adam Schiff, okay? So under questioning from the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, Mueller contradicted Trump's repeated claims that his investigation was, quote, a witch hunt. We have the audio here. Here is Mueller and Adam Schiff.
When your investigation looked into these matters, numerous Trump associates lied to your team, the grand jury, and to Congress?
Number of persons that we interviewed in our investigation, it turns out, did lie.
Mike Flynn lied?
He was convicted of lying, yes.
George Papadopoulos was convicted of lying?
True.
Paul Manafort was convicted of lying?
True.
Paul Manafort in fact, went so far as to encourage other people to lie?
That is accurate.
Manafort's deputy, Rick Gates, lied?
That is accurate.
Michael Cohen, the president's lawyer, was indicted for lying?
True.
He lied to stay on message with the president?
Allegedly by him.
And when Donald Trump called your investigation a witch hunt, that was also false, was it not?
I'd like to think so, yes.
Well, your investigation is not a witch hunt, is it?
It is not a witch hunt.
Bingo.
When the president said the Russian interference was a hoax, that was false, wasn't it?
True.
When he said it publicly, it was false?
He did say publicly that it was false, yes.
And when he told it to Putin, that was false too, wasn't it?
That I'm not familiar with.
When the president said he had no business dealings with Russia, that was false, wasn't it?
I'm not going to go into the details of the report that along those lines.
What was that? What did he say when he asked about what Trump said to Putin? That I have no. What was the exact phrase that his response?
I'll play it again.
Yeah, play that one again because that one is just unbelievable. Like he did not know. See, this is where he's not.
And when Donald Trump called your investigation a witch hunt, that was also false, was it not?
I'd like to think so, yes.
Well, your investigation is not a witch hunt, is it?
It is not a witch hunt.
When the president said the Russian interference was a hoax, that was false, wasn't it?
True.
When he said it publicly, it was false?
He did say publicly that it was false, yes.
And when he told it to Putin, that was false too, wasn't it?
That I'm not familiar with.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
When the president said he had no business dealings with Russia, that was false, wasn't it?
I'm not going to go into the details of the report.
Okay, there we go. Thanks for nothing there. I'm not going to go into the details of the report about the business dealings of the president with Russia, and that is the heart of this investigation. And that I have not familiar with, is what he said. What you saw it? The whole country saw it.
He was investigating while we were watching TV.
I see. Okay. If it's not in a report, I'm not familiar with it.
Exactly.
Did the sun rise this morning, Mr. Miller? I'm not familiar with that. Do not know.
Remember Jack Webb and Dragnet?
Yes.
Just the facts,
Just
man.
the facts, man.
The
okay.
facts.
Well, there was a fact. Trump got on at a press conference with Putin and said, "Well, if he says he didn't do it, he didn't do it." So, this is what's frustrating about Mueller. And this is me speaking as a reporter. This is me speaking as somebody who wants to know what the heck happened with Trump and the Russians. Let's get at the bottom of it. And I also want to deal with the fighting. And this is why it is still important, Monroe. And I say this all the time, and I will say it all the time. The Russians and Trump very successfully exploited divisions in the Democratic Party that are still being exploited to this day between the Sanders wing and the Clinton wing. A day doesn't pass on this show where a Bernie supporter doesn't come in here belly aching about Hillary, and a Hillary supporter doesn't come in here belly aching about Bernie. And they're victimized by what the Russians did by hacking those computers.
Well said by Bernie, bro.
Yeah, Bernie, bro.
What's a Bernie, bro?
Right,
I didn't cry like a baby when the election was over. I wasn't one of those kinds of Bernie. Oh, we lost.
Right.
Okay, I didn't do that, but I was a Bernie, bro. Yeah, I voted for Bernie. Yeah, proud of it, too.
All right, I got some audio here from hearing number 1. We had a good time talking about it. Let's get Monroe's take on it.
Yeah, come on, Monroe.
I got 3 Republicans here. I'm just going to spin the wheel and see which one we land on. Louis Gohmert.
Listen, regarding collusion or conspiracy, you didn't find evidence of any agreement, I'm quoting you, among the Trump campaign officials and any Russia-linked individuals to interfere with our U.S. election, correct?
Correct.
So you also note in the report that an element of any of those obstructions you referenced requires a corrupt state of mind, correct?
Corrupt intent, correct.
Right. And if somebody knows they did not conspire with anybody from Russia to affect the election, and they see the big Justice Department with people that hate that person coming after them, and then a special counsel appointed who hires dozen or more people that hate that person, and he knows he's innocent. He's not corruptly acting in order to see that justice is done. What he's doing is not obstructing justice. He is pursuing justice, and the fact that you ran it out 2 years means you perpetuated injustice.
I take your
Gentleman's
question.
time has expired. The witness may answer the
All
question.
right, we're done.
First, again, what is the question that was asked? But, all right,
Okay, first of all,
what was he up to there, Monroe?
it's important for you to remember that he still believes that Obama was born in Kenya. And I'm not joking.
This
Gohmert.
Gohmert,
Yeah, Gohmert. He's still a true believer in the birther nonsense. Okay, now, and the other thing is...
What a congressman.
Thank God he's not my congressman. I'd be ashamed. I mean, he is so... I mean, it's just such a stupid argument he's doing. I mean, it's part of the twisting oneself into a pretzel.
Yeah.
To make a point. I mean, it's just...
And I don't know what his point is.
Oh, his point is that Trump is innocent.
Yeah.
And so Trump obstructed justice because he knew he was innocent, and therefore there was nothing for him to obstruct. And he was upset about it.
I gotcha. That was his point?
Yes.
Good God.
I mean, no, that's one of the points they make.
Yeah.
He's not the only one to be making that point. It's like, Trump, poor Trump, is such a victim. And they've been treating him so badly for 2.5 years, and therefore you can understand why he acts the way he acts.
I see.
Lies the way
That's
he lies.
what that point was. Okay, that was a hard one for me to get to ascertain. David Ferris has joined us, Roosevelt University political science professor. We'll probably play a few more of these things to get David's response. Also, he's going to pick apart Nate Cohn. I've been waiting for this for about a week now. I think it's been about 5 days. Nate Cohn's analysis that Donald Trump, let's not even have an election. Let's just declare him the winner. That's what Cohn said, and Democrats have lost their minds. His analysis, Cohn says that Donald Trump will win on another electoral victory. David Ferris thinks otherwise, and he's done his own deep dive, so we'll bring him on when we return. Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
All right, our friends and co-hosts at the Chicago Sun-Times are offering you, you, the listener, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all, that's ALL, all of the stories that you love. Unlock every feature, video, and podcast, just like this show, The Ben Joravsky Show, by signing up now for a digital subscription. For a limited time only, you can test out digital access for only $1. Not a typo. $1. Seriously, there's no reason to not give this a shot. Stay up to date on breaking stories, get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters, cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city, and go deep inside City Hall with best in-class political reporting. $1. I said $1 for your first month. You really can't do better than that. All right, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Wednesday, July 24th is moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back our program. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Wednesday, July 24th. And live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, it's all things the Muller testimony. We still got Monroe Anderson in studio. We welcome back political author and professor David Ferris. And, well, she's not going to be talking Muller. Well, we'll probably twist her arm and make her talk Muller. Sun-Times obit writer Maureen O'Donnell. And now your host, biggest fan of Louis Gohmert in this building. No, he's not. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Louis Gohmert, the congressman from Texas, what a character he is. One of Donald Trump's big defenders, and as Monroe just pointed out, he still believes that Barack Obama was born in Kenya. David Ferris in the studio, Roosevelt University political scientist, professor, author of It's Time to Fight Dirty, How Democrats Can Build a Lasting Majority in American Politics. I discovered this book, I don't know how long ago it was, David, a year or so ago. I've been citing it ever since. You're my guru in fighting back. And not rolling over. And to that point, you had a tweet today. I'm not usually a person who reads tweets, but somehow or other I found this tweet. I will now quote you to you. Quote, I'm only going to watch these hearings if Dems promise not to roll over afterwards. That is so David Ferrisian, if such a word exists. I'm going to ask you to explain what you were getting at in that tweet. But first, I got to ask you to take a little deeper dive on what you said to us off mic about what Robert Mueller's performance today.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm just surprised at this point that that Mueller has not been more forceful in fighting back against these conspiracy theories that are getting lobbed at him by Republican members of Congress. They're basically reading from transcripts of Fox News lunacy and conspiracy theories and attacking his integrity. And he just kind of, he's just like, I have no comment, or, I'm not going to talk about that. I heard him say at one point today, I'm not going to try to explain that to you. And it's like, okay, that's great. But why did you, why come today at all?
Yeah.
If you're mostly going to avoid addressing these big things. So I'm disappointed. I feel like at a certain point it becomes undignified. I think he gets up there and he's like, I'm going to maintain my dignity and my composure, sort of like Hillary Clinton at the Benghazi hearings, right? But she did get angry at some point, right? I mean, there's that viral moment where she's sitting with her head in her hand like this, looking at him like, you idiots want to ask me another question, and I'm waiting for that from Mueller, at what point does he not just snap and say I'm a Republican, I'm a lifelong Republican, I did this out of a service to the public, and for you to sit up there and lob these preposterous theories at me is offensive. It's beneath your dignity, it's beneath the dignity of Congress. So maybe I'm living in a fantasy world where I expected that from him at this point. But
actually, he didn't answer them when they came up with their crazy theories. When they were the Republicans, when they were supposed to be questioning him, they were actually giving an exposition on their nutty theories about how the Democrats did all this.
Yeah.
And his response was like, well, I'm not going to respond to that.
No, David's point's a good one. I've watched many congressional, high-profile congressional hearings. I can think of Oliver North. It's Monroe would be the only one in this room would remember it. But Oliver North testifying in front of a Democratic-run Senate committee investigating the Iran-Contra hearings, the Iran-Contra scandal of the Reagan administration in the 1980s, and he just went on the attack from the get-go, and it was very it saved his neck. He became, of course, a hero to the Republican right, even if he had been dealing illegally and secretly with Iran, a country we're supposedly at war with. And I don't see anything resembling that from Robert Mueller. You're absolutely correct. Do you get that one? I'd love to hear David's reaction to this, where the one congressman was asking him about the investigators who gave money to Hillary Clinton or their bias. Do you have that one?
I believe so. I believe this was Kelly Armstrong today.
Mr. Mueller, this isn't just about you being able to vouch for your team. This is about knowing that the day you accepted this role, you had to be aware no matter what this report concluded, half of the country was going to be skeptical of your team's findings. And that's why we have recusal laws that define bias and perceive bias for this very reason. 28 United States Code 528 specifically lists not just political conflict of interest, but the appearance of political conflict of interest. It's just simply not enough that you vouch for your team. The interested justice demand that no perceived bias exists. I can't imagine a single prosecutor or judge that I have ever appeared in front of would be comfortable with these circumstances where over half of the prosecutorial team had a direct relationship to the opponent of the person being investigated.
Well, let me one other fact that I put on the table, and that is we hired 19 lawyers over the period of time. Of those 19 lawyers, 14 of them were transferred from elsewhere in the Department of Justice. Only 5 came from outside.
And so half of them had a direct relationship, political or personal, with the opponent of the person you were investigating. And that's my point. I wonder if not a single word in this entire report was changed, but rather the only difference was we switched Hillary Clinton and President Trump.
All right, David Ferris, your thoughts on that?
I mean, again, I find his defense feeble. He's taking these questions at face value. It's like it's like as if Sean Hannity was in the room, questioning Bob Mueller, and Mueller was like, well, 14 of these guys were transferred from other parts of the like anybody cares on the Republican side that they came from DOJ instead of outside. You know, that's not the locus of the conspiracy theories. And so I don't know if he was tired or if he's just tired of this whole circus or what. But he needs to lean into this and say you can't just smear the integrity of these people who set aside their lives for 2 years to investigate this, this president, and to defend them by name. Talk about the people that never contributed to Hillary Clinton's campaign or whatever. Talk about how he's wrong about the regulations. Point out the irony these guys citing specific, sections of the DOJ code as if the president himself has not violated, 57 different ones. It's like, you just want a little bit more spirited fight. If I poured 2 years of my life into something, and these guys had spent, months and months and months impugning my integrity and convincing half the population that it didn't matter, I'd be more upset than this. I'd be like the guys that negotiated the Iran deal. When Trump torched that deal, they went nuclear on Twitter.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And so if I pour my life into something, maybe it's just me, but I'm gonna expend a little bit more energy defending myself in my operation.
I'm with you 100%.
Mueller got a little bit more animated when they attacked his team. That was part of it, what you just played, if you believe it or not.
Yeah, that's him animated.
That's part of the animation. But he was offended. He pointed out that he never asked anyone for their political affiliation.
Yeah.
When he hired them, he just hired the best guys.
Well, this gets into one of David Ferris's themes, Monroe. And I don't know if you guys have never been on the show together, but
we've said the same thing.
Very similar worldviews.
Right.
And I'm putting words into this young man's mouth. I'm going to let you, David, say it yourself. But the Democrats don't fight the same way the Republicans fight. And Republicans, they don't care if they were saying A at Benghazi and now they're having to completely contradict themselves here. They will do it. Right. And they don't care. It doesn't matter. Democrats, and in this case, Mueller's acting like a Democrat, even though he's a lifelong Republican. They don't want to get in the fight. They're bigger than the fight. The report speaks for this is an enormous report that got totally trashed by the Republicans. You're right, David. Defend your freaking report. Defend the people who gave up 2 years of their lives investigating. They just let the Republicans trash them as though they were just operatives from the Hillary Clinton campaign. It's the same old Democratic fall down and let the Republicans roll all over you.
Yeah, and that's that's why I wasn't too excited about today. My editor of the week was like, "You want to write this?" And I was like, "I guess," because I just don't think anything's going to come of this. Because I think the Democratic senior leadership has already made a strategic decision to move on from this. They've got these various investigations; they're all getting stonewalled, and unless they open up an impeachment inquiry, then I think the president's strategy is going to be vindicated. And so Democrats in the House today, they can do it. They did everything they could, I think, in the questioning. I thought the questioning was fine, right? The crux of the matter is, what are you going to do when the questioning is over? Mueller laid out what happened in the report. He laid out what happened today. I wish that he would be more direct and say, I believe the president committed crimes. There were a few moments, I think you've probably seen them on Twitter. One is where Representative Ken Buck of Colorado said, do you think the president can be prosecuted after he leaves office or indicted after he leaves office? And Mueller's like, yes, he could. Yeah. Right, and everybody on the left was like, yeah, we got him, this is it. The moons go off.
That's an exact quote. Yes, he could. Right.
He could, yeah. It's like, well, would he? I don't know. So what I really wanted to see from Democrats today was, could he be indicted after he leaves office? Sure. That was obvious before today. It's obvious after today, right? The president can be indicted for crimes committed while in office after he leaves, because Bob Mueller's not writing the OLC memos, right? So he's not the final word on this anyway. But you need to get him on record. Would you, if you were running the show, would you indict President Trump when he leaves office? Yes or no? And I think people on the left think that they got that moment today, and they did not. And that's, again, comes back to Mueller and his unwillingness to go there.
See, we're in the wrong part of the government at this point. We needed to be in the Senate. This needed to be going on in the Senate with all those people who are running for president right now asking the questions. They would have been much. Can you imagine
Kamala Harris?
Right? She would have been up and down and all over him.
Yeah.
Even Cory Booker. He would have been. It would have been a completely different setting. Although Swalwell was
forceful.
He's not been bad. He's been forceful. Yeah, he's been good.
I think the particular problem, and both of you alluded to it, is the witness in this particular case. And he didn't want to be there.
Right.
He's showing through every body language you could show that he doesn't want to be there. He won't state anything clearly, coherently, straightforward. He speaks mush. So you can't even come away like. You can't even, like he says, I'd like to think so. Remember that one question they asked, and we just played it.
About Putin.
Did you guys do a good job, or are you straightforward? I'd like to think so. What? I'd like to think so. Hell yeah, we did a good job.
Yes or no?
Yeah, I'd like to think so. And so I think the problem is the witness, and I'm starting to wonder. If the Democrats did themselves a favor by calling him to testify. But let's get something out you just said, the strategic decision, David, to move away. You said a strategic decision has already been made by the Democrats regarding this. What are you talking about?
Well, I mean, I think I'm talking about Leader Pelosi and her so far refusal to initiate an impeachment inquiry in the House of Representatives. And you read 1,000 Politico articles about it. I don't know her, but the theory is, she's worried about the moderate Democrats that were elected on the margins by, half a point, 1 point, people that were really, that are really responsible for the margin for the Democrats in the House. She thinks it's going to play badly for those members to have to defend an impeachment inquiry next November. And I couldn't disagree with her more. I think that if you look at the history of the last 10 years, suggests that the whole party sinks or swims together. That the moderates can go out on the street every day and be like, I'm a moderate, don't hate me, I know you hate my party right now, but don't hate me, save me on election day. And it just does not work.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so you can see this over and over again in the Senate. You saw it. You saw it last year with Dean Heller. You saw it the year before, in 2016, with Mark Kirk. You see it on the Democratic side with like 9 different senators in 2014 who were like, I'm not really that keen on the ACA, or Obamacare as they call it, and they lost by 18 points. These moderates are either going to win because the American people want the Democrats to control the House, or they're going to lose because they don't think that the Democratic base didn't feel like enough fight was put up against President Trump, and or President Trump remains popular enough to retake the House, for the Republicans to retake the House. It does not matter. Does not matter.
Well, and I think what we may get after this with Mueller, because he's not the savior they were hoping for, is that they will start the impeachment inquiry. Because you also have these polls coming out now that, 538 or 528, saying that Trump can win the electoral vote.
All right, we're going to get into that.
So if Trump can win, it's, because now they're nervous about all this because they think they're going to win it all back. But if it becomes obvious that there's a good shot that Trump can win, then they've got to go to scorched earth strategy, or either just close up the party.
Well, I think, before we get into the Electoral College, I think that the Mueller, this is what's so frustrating about Mueller as a public figure, and this gets at what Leah was saying before you got here, David. The Mueller report makes clear the things that Donald Trump did wrong, and the evidence is there in the Mueller report. So you have to ask yourself, is the evidence strong enough that you should have an impeachment process begin? I think yes. I think a president telling his cohorts to lie and cover up evidence of to thwart an investigation into whether he was in bed with the Russians and hacking in the Democratic computers, I think that warrants impeachment hearing. Now, personally, that's my belief, and that's in the Mueller report. The guy won't come out and say it, declare it right there for everybody to hear, but it's in his report. And so I think you should have an impeachment hearing.
Yeah, well, as I've said before, I think they should have the impeachment hearing, and I don't think it's going to work for Trump, because if you have week after week fact witnesses talking about the horrible things Trump did, and he has to run on that, and the Republicans have to defend him on that, he's not going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've had these hearings, people come forth and said this happened and this happened and this happened, then the Republicans will come on with their fantasy thing about how the Democrats had this conspiracy to help Trump win.
Yeah,
that's their logic on this.
All right, now
one other thing, real quickly. I am still waiting on some of these Republicans to explain to me and the American people why the Democrats, the FBI, the CIA, all these people hate Trump so much. I mean, where did this hatred come from? You know, they're doing all these horrible things because they hate him, but they never bother to tell you why they
case that the investigators are making. Thank David, and let's take that dive. Win by more votes. You've already written a response, so
and still win the presidency by hanging on in the Electoral College. That's the system design. I mean, the system design is such that, you know, you could win California by 25 million votes and lose every other single state by 1 vote, right? And win like a 65-35 decisive next year, something like that, you know. And it's not really backed. The headline's not backed up by the data that he presents, right? He looks at 2 states, interestingly, not Pennsylvania, not Michigan, but he looks at Wisconsin and Florida. And he says, look at Wisconsin. Seems like the president is as popular there today, roughly, as he was on Election Day in 2016, using data from the 2018 midterm election results, and then a couple of New York Times surveys. He puts up a chart that shows the president less popular in Milwaukee by a little bit, and much less popular in the rest of the state. And then he's like, see, so looks like he's going to win Wisconsin. And it's like, well, no. A, that doesn't make any sense, right? The whole article is premised on Trump getting more popular between now and Election Day. In other words, consolidating his support, which I'm not sure that's possible, because he already has the support of as many Republicans as he's ever going to get. And he seems determined, so he wakes up every morning to alienate what few remaining independents there are in the country. So Cohen's assumption that the president, like all incumbents, will get slightly more popular as Election Day approaches undergirds the whole article. He doesn't put that caveat in there until the very end. And I don't think he considers the possibility that he's wrong, right? That there is other data out there that suggests the president is much less popular in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, in Michigan than he was on election night in 2016. And that's a polling operation called Morning Consult. They do a daily tracking poll of the president's approval in all 50 states. It's a very remarkable project. We didn't have this before. And those numbers show the president at about 42, 43% in Wisconsin, a little bit lower than that in Michigan, a little bit lower than that in Pennsylvania. And so I just, you're cherry picking data. And I thought in the worst possible way, you're cherry picking data from your employer because the New York Times produced those surveys, right? And so I just, I don't buy it. The other part of it I didn't buy, right? The story that we could have a worse disjuncture in 2020 than we did in 2016 is premised on 2 different things. Okay, one is Trump hangs on in the 3 blue wall states that he captured in 16. He hangs on in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, right? And then that's the win the Electoral College story, right? The lose the popular vote by more story depends on 2 things. One, losing California by worse than he did in 2016, and then winning Texas by fewer points than he did in 2016. There's some other states involved, you say Illinois or some of the South Carolina or whatever. Okay, and there's no evidence in recent electoral history with incumbent presidents that kind of 2 different paths of the popular vote in a very patterned and meaningful way is going to happen. Usually most states are going to break one way or the other. Either the incumbent will do better than they did the first time, or they will do worse. In 2012, Barack Obama did worse in 47 out of 51 states, including D.C. Okay, in 2004, George W. Bush did better in 34 out of 51. So the idea that Trump is going to do worse in the blue states, and it just doesn't make any sense. The data is not there for California either. Trump's approval rating in California is higher than his election night share of the vote there. And so I just don't see it, right? I think that, particularly in California, New York, Illinois, I think Trump is at pretty much near the rock bottom of the 2 through the Midwest that, we didn't see it in 2018. It's possible, sure. I mean, the president could get more popular between now and Election Day. But I sort of, like a lot of people, it was like that article dropped in my lap on Friday afternoon, right? Then we'd spend the weekend being like, oh my God.
Everybody lost their mind.
God, we all lost our minds. And it was like, no, man, I mean, sure. Yeah. Work is, don't be complacent about it. I think the president has a decent chance of being reelected. But I don't think it's going to be like that. I hope it's not going to be like that.
Yeah. Well, I so many different people sent me copies of that article. It made me believe that the whole thing was calculated just to get hits and clicks because, as you said, the map that he put out sort of contradicted the headline. It was contradicted by the headline. Let's take it down a little bit, state by state, if you will, for the moment. Trump, important swing states, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. What's your sense of Florida? Now, that is a state that Donald Trump absolutely has to win if he's going to get reelected. I'm thinking off the top of my head, I don't think any Republican has won the presidency in the last, since the 70s without having won Florida. So what's your sense of how Florida's going these days?
I mean, Florida has been, among the closest states for multiple, since the turn of the century. And I think Democrats have gotten overly pessimistic about Florida because we've lost statewide elections there. The last 4 cycles are, 18, 16, and 14 at least. We've just, just by this much, we lost the governorship and we lost a Senate race there in 2018 in an otherwise very good year for Democrats. We lost the presidential vote there by a couple of points in 2016. And so I feel like everyone has just written off Florida.
Or more accurately, it was stolen in much of the
2000,
time.
yeah.
2000, in 18, it was stolen.
In the governor's race.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have perfected the cheating.
They being the Republicans.
The Republicans.
And when you say stealing, what do you mean?
Rigging the election so they can win against all odds.
No, but I mean stealing it by what?
In 2000, by the hanging Chad in the Supreme Court. In 18, it was voter suppression, and there was a couple of counties, critical counties, where they should have won, and strange things happened to the ballots. They got lost, or they disappeared, or so. I mean, it was plainly rigged.
Let's look at Michigan then. Your thoughts on how Michigan is?
I mean, Michigan as a state, I think that we're going to look back at Michigan the way that we looked at Indiana after 2008. Remember 2008, Barack Obama won in Indiana?
Yeah, I was stunned when that happened.
Which was shocking.
Yeah.
And then it went right back. Went right back to being a red state. But 5 minutes later, they were like, "Oh my God,
what have we done?
What have we done? We actually hate Democrats. It's crazy."
Yeah.
And so I think in Michigan, which was a blue-leaning state prior to 2016, I think Michigan has gone back to being a blue-leaning state now. That doesn't mean a Republican can't win a statewide race there. It's not as red as Indiana. But I don't think Michigan is going to be a tipping point state. I don't think it's going to be super competitive. The Democratic candidates won going away last year. And I would expect any Democratic nominee to win Michigan by 4 or 5 points just based on the president's approval ratings there. And I don't think that Trump is going to. I don't think he's going to carry Michigan. I really don't. I think the race comes down to Wisconsin.
Well, and I think that unlike when Hillary was running, whoever the Democratic standard bearer is this time, they're going to spend a whole lot of time
in Wisconsin, Michigan,
Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
All right. Yeah, I agree with that. By the way, if you say it comes down to Wisconsin, then you're presuming that Pennsylvania will swing back.
I do. I mean, I might have I don't like to make ironclad predictions anymore because before the election in 2016, I told my students in class, I said, if Donald Trump wins Pennsylvania, I will eat this suit jacket.
How did it taste?
How did it taste?
Well, the next day I was like, actually, I've reconsidered. I only have this one suit jacket, and I can't eat it. I need it. I'm really sorry. So again, I think it's unlikely that Trump will carry Pennsylvania. He's not popular there. The Democratic gubernatorial candidate won by double digits last year. And again, it's winning Pennsylvania relied on this unlikely confluence of factors. There's just sort of not enough people turning out in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. It relied on white voters turning out in numbers that they hadn't turned out in before, and it depended on the president winning independents. And that's, I think, the big thing working against him right now in all 3 of these states is that independents, where they went for him in 2016, have turned against him pretty decisively. And you can win the presidency and still lose independents. Obama did it in 2012. And it's happened before, but the president is losing them by enough that I think it's going to make the difference. In at least in Pennsylvania and Michigan, and then I'm much more worried about Wisconsin than either one of these 2 states, because Tony Evers, the new governor, won less than a point, right?
Yeah, Democrat.
A Democrat in a wave election year in 2018 against an incumbent, Scott Walker, who was running for his third term, essentially, should have worn out his welcome with voters by then, and he still almost won. He almost beat Evers, and so I feel like Wisconsin has changed in a way that's a little bit more permanent than Michigan and Pennsylvania, which I would still describe as blue leaning, whereas Wisconsin seems to have become this like sort of pure toss-up state in the way that Florida is.
Do you see any states that are the equivalent of Wisconsin, but for the Democrats' advantage? In other words, a state that you think is now trending Democrat that the Republicans would have been accounted for?
Georgia. I think Georgia.
Do you think Georgia fits that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Georgia fits that bill. Arizona fits that bill. North Carolina fits that bill. North Carolina is a state that Barack Obama won in 2008, so it's not unprecedented. And I think it's important to note that President Trump has one path, and that depends on Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, right? And he doesn't need all three of them, but a Democrat can make up for the loss of a Wisconsin or a Michigan elsewhere. So you could win Arizona, you could win Georgia, you could win North Carolina.
You have these shifting demographics where these southern states that were perfectly red keep getting these factories, and these companies are moving their headquarters down there, and with them come left-thinking people.
Yeah.
And so that's watering down that solidarity that they once had.
And all right, so in terms of getting people in a Georgia or a Wisconsin to move to the Democratic side, there's a struggle here. We hear it on this show all the time. We have the Pelosi attitude, I'll just put her name on it, that you can't go too far left because you'll alienate the swing voters. And then you have pretty much every guest who comes on this show point of view that you have to go left. That's the way to do it. You have to stand for something. How do you view it, David?
I'm probably more with the latter group. I think particularly in this era where partisanship is so hardened, you could run Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, or you could win Joe Biden. I mean, you could run Joe Biden or Pete Buttigieg, who's the moderate white guy in the race at this point, under the age of 75.
Yeah, I was going to say there's quite a
few.
Yeah,
the only one with a chance to win. This is a 5-person race right now. Like, let's be honest, right? And you could, I think you could run candidates from either wing of the party, and on election day, the difference in the number of Democrats who will vote for either of those candidates is not going to change by more than a point. I just think that at the end of the day, the party will consolidate, especially with a chance to dislodge Donald Trump from office. The question is, which of these candidates might appeal to independents in these states, and I think the paths differ depending on the candidate. Right? I think somebody like Kamala Harris has a chance to really make up margins in the South, win North Carolina, win Georgia with the right running mate, maybe win Arizona, and maybe she loses Wisconsin. But if then it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. If you got Michigan, you got Pennsylvania, and you pick up Georgia or you pick up Arizona, that makes up for the loss of Wisconsin.
And I think it's a base race, period. And so whoever can turn out the largest number in their base will win this race. And what Democrats have to do, what they failed to do with Hillary, was to get the black vote out. Had the black vote turned out at the same proportion that it did when Obama was running, we wouldn't be having this discussion about Trump at all.
Because then Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania would have gone the other way.
Exactly.
All right, since you raised the issue of race, let's deal with it. Donald Trump has clearly decided that it's in his best interest to put Representative Omar, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Tlaib, and Representative Presley. Somehow or other, he decided to throw her into the mix as well.
His inner races just came out. It wasn't.
So you don't even think it's a strategy?
No.
He's doubling down on it, tripling down on it, quadrupling down on it.
No, his inner races, he couldn't help it anymore. He has white supremacists as his advisors.
And
so,
it's his instinct anyway.
And it's his instinct, and so he's just going to go with the flow.
All right. Well, the defense for Donald Trump was articulated in today's Chicago Tribune by a columnist by the name of John Cass, old friend of Monroe's.
Oh, you love him.
John Cass is to the right of right, and his attitude is that the Democrats are like Chicken Little. They keep crying racism, and it means nothing anymore. And so essentially he's absolving Donald Trump. Donald Trump may have made some asinine comments, but they're not racist, so stop calling it racism. And let's move on. So I guess anything's permissible for Donald Trump, according to John Cass. How do you deal, gentlemen, with Donald Trump and the assertions he's making and the arguments he's making? What do you think is the best strategy to pursue to try to win the election and deal with the ugly, obnoxious, and I believe racist comments coming from Donald Trump?
I mean, first of all, John Cass is like the worst columnist in America. And he inherited that title from a guy in Philly, actually where I'm from, named Stu Bukowski, who just retired. So John, the title is yours now. Stop gaslighting me, right? Like when you tell a bunch of people of color to go back where they came from, that's not asinine, that's not a misstep, that's racist, right? You can't be in America because you're a person of color, right? He's not saying that to white people, he's not saying to people, go back to Germany or go back to the Czech Republic or whatever. He's saying that to people of color. And it's absurd. And I think the Democrats should call it out for what it is, which is racism. That's not a 2020 strategy though, right? I mean, I think in a lot of respects, the president is gonna hang himself by his own petard with his racism, right? He did it before the midterms when he made the whole thing about the caravan, and it really hurt him in the House. And he's gonna do it next year. He's gonna focus attention on these women of color in the House. And I think a lot of people, whether they agree with them or not,
help himself.
He can't help himself.
He can't. He's a racist.
Yeah.
And he's tried to hide it at some points. He's tried to rationalize it, but he's a racist. There's no question about it. He's been a racist since the 70s. Mm-hmm. And as things heat up and he becomes more and more threatened, then he's going to turn to his white base, because the Republican Party is it's the white man's party now, the white people's party.
I just don't see it as a winning strategy for the Republican Party. This is where I disagree with Cohn, who writes for the New York Times. I don't see how it's a winning strategy for the Republican Party to double down on Donald Trump's rhetoric. And you may be correct, Monroe. I can't get into Donald Trump's head what a frightening thought that is, to see if he's doing it because he thinks it's the best political strategy or because he's just following some racist impulse.
Well, he thinks it's a good strategy also.
So it's a combination of things.
Yeah, I mean,
right. The fact that he does it again and again and again
for people
suggests that he's strategic.
And for people who try to say, well, he's really not a racist, but he's doing it for strategy or whatever, look at his inner circle. Look at his cabinet. One token black person in his entire cabinet. When he has these cabinet meetings, when he has these his inner circle meetings, it looks like the white citizens.
The views in the comments of Monroe Anderson. I knew there would be one of those today, Monroe. But I can't believe, David, that it's a successful strategy. I maybe I'm naive, but I just can't believe it's a successful strategy in what's the year 2020, Monroe? I cannot believe it's a successful strategy to blatantly appeal to racism and think that running on a David Duke type sentiment will win.
And that's
got him there, though. That's what you have to remember. It got him there the last time, and so he thinks that he can double down on it and get there again.
Well, he's being really overt now.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And I don't think it's a strategy that appeals to the kinds of voters he's going to need to put him over the top. It appeals to certain kinds of people in certain kinds of states. One of the most revelatory things about the Trump era for me has been just sort of processing how many more bad people there are in America than I thought there were. It's like many, many millions more people who are okay with this kind of rhetoric than I thought there were. But that doesn't mean it's a majority. I think the real question is whether, how Democrats capitalize on this stuff. And I do think they learned a lesson in 2016, which is that Hillary Clinton's closing strategy was basically like, Donald Trump is a bad man. Do you want to look at your children, and have to tell them that Trump is president, or see him saying these terrible things about people from Mexico and women and all this stuff? And those were great ads, man. The ads where they had the little girls watching the TV with Donald Trump saying all this disgusting misogynist stuff. It didn't work, because the fact that Donald Trump is a bad human being is pretty much like baked into the equation at this point. And so my feeling would be Democrats mostly have to let the president's racism, call it out. Obviously, you don't want to be silent about it. I'm not saying don't cut a couple of ads, if it makes sense. But the run on Donald, running on Donald Trump as a racist, Donald Trump is a bad man, Donald Trump cheated on his wife. Like, all these people know that already, and it shocked me as much as anybody, but a lot of people didn't care, And so I think they need to keep the focus on it's corruption, it's inequality, it's the economy's not working for a lot of people. Racism and personal morality can be part of the message, but it can't be the leading thing. Healthcare, definitely.
Healthcare. How far should they go in healthcare? This is another debate that is raging on this show. A day doesn't pass if we don't have this discussion. How far should the Democrats go in healthcare?
I feel like Elizabeth Warren has a good needle threading on this issue, which is, she says, obviously, and then Sanders says this when you really pin Sanders down on this. He also says we need a transition period, right? So I think the position that we'd like to move towards a system of universal health care that is free at the point of service. I wish they would all stop saying single payer, okay? Because when people hear the word single payer, they think the single payer is them. Okay, and
that's a good point.
He said we want universal health care that is free at the point of service. That means when you go to the doctor, you don't pay anything.
Yeah.
There's going to be a transition period of maybe it's a public option, maybe it looks like something else, maybe we lower the Medicare age. There's a lot of different ways to get there. What I hope is that they don't spend the next 15 months litigating single payer, universal health care versus the Pete Buttigieg option. I hope it doesn't get ugly like that, because I think the message of the party needs to be universal health care, free at the point of service, right? We can argue about how to get there, right? And I think one of the geniuses of the Sanders 2016 campaign versus the Hillary campaign was Hillary was like, I've got this 17 bullet pointed plan. I've got these wonks in the corner here from Harvard working on it. Trust me, right? Yeah. Whereas Sanders was like, free healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you need to tell people what they're going to get, rather than get bogged down in the details of how they're going to get there.
I think they should just say repair Obamacare and let it go at that, because it's gotten to a point where Obamacare is loved and wanted and needed it. So, but it's
well, that's the Joe Biden strategy,
yeah, right,
now,
exactly. No, that's right. That's the smart strategy. You can move it on. Social Security, which was opposed by the Republicans when it first came in under FDR, it was socialism, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if you were to go into Appalachia and say we're going to take away your Social Security, you get shot.
Yeah, no, it's not going to work. All right, before we take the break and bring in Maureen O'Donnell to totally switch topics, I have to ask you, both of you, David, you said it's a 5-person race. The debates will be next week. We're going to be talking about them a lot. So before we let you out of here, name the 5 people that you were alluding to when you said it's a 5-person race, and then Monroe, you give us your 5. Go.
It's Biden, Sanders, Warren, Harris, and Buttigieg.
Wait, Biden, Sanders, Warren, Harris. Okay. All right.
And nobody else. You've got 20-person debates for a 5-person field. Right. It's theater at this point, which is fine.
They're the only
theater.
They're the only ones in double digits.
Yeah.
And they're the ones who are beating Trump. In the polls right now. Even I guess it's Buttigieg. So one of them is just beating him by 1 point. But they're all beating Trump in the polling right now. So those are the people who Democrats want.
All right.
Someone who can beat Trump.
It's someone who can beat Trump. I would take Buttigieg out of that category. I'd say it's a 4-person race. I do not think there's any way Buttigieg will win the Democratic nomination. His support among black voters, I believe, is 0.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. 0. You're not going to win the nomination if you're.
Well, it's got to be one. It's got to be one. It's got to be one somewhere, right? I don't know.
His killer cop resigned. So,
yeah, I saw that.
Right,
yeah.
exactly. So,
And one more time, I urge absolutely everybody to check out the interview we did on it as a bonus with Henry Davis, a councilman who ran against Pete Buttigieg in South Bend, if you want to understand why his support is at zero. David Ferris, Roosevelt University political science professor, author of It's Time to Fight Dirty. I'm going to have to bring you back for a whole show on the Electoral College. We're going to do a bonus on the Electoral College. We didn't even get into that today. It's an obsession of mine. And, of course, the great Monroe Anderson. Every Wednesday he comes in here, talks Trump, and we're kind of hard on old Mueller today, but whatever. I think he deserves it. Got Maureen O'Donnell. We're going to shift gears. We're going to bring her on, talk about some of these great stories she's been writing over the last week about some Chicagoans that you should know about. So we'll be right back after this.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Hey there, producer Dennis here. Thanks for finding and listening to the brand new Ben Joravsky Show. All right, so here's how this works. The Ben Joravsky Show live streams on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Once the show is over, you can listen to the replay on our YouTube channel, or we throw it online for you to download by 4 p.m. Where can you download the Ben Joravsky Show, you may be asking yourself? Well, you may be asking yourself a fantastic question. You can find previous Ben Joravsky shows and guest interviews through several outlets. The Chicago Sun-Times online, chicago.suntimes.com, the Chicago Reader online, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pick one. Just search for The Ben Joravsky Show. J-O-R-A, V as in victory, S-K-Y. So, let's recap. Tuesday through Friday, 1 until 3 p.m. Live streamed on the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel and downloadable by 4 at chicago.suntimes.com, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you listen to your favorite podcasts. Yes, the Ben Joravsky Show is back. We're live and downloaded. Tell your friends and enjoy the rest of the show. Our friends and co-hosts at the Chicago Sun-Times are offering you, yes, you, our listeners, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all, that's A-L-L, all of the stories you love. Unlock every feature, video, and podcast just like the Ben Joravsky Show by signing up now for a digital subscription. For a limited time only, you can lock in our lowest rate yet, only $29.99 for a full year of all the news you need to know. Stay up to date on breaking stories, get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters, cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city, and go deep inside City Hall with best-in-class political reporting. $29.99. I said $29.99 for a full year of unlimited access. I checked online. You can't do better than that. Take advantage of this exclusive deal now at suntimes.com/Ben.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's a thrift shop located at 6241 North Broadway, and people, it is awesome. Furniture, appliances, lamps, books, clothes, electronics, and so much more. And it's a thrift shop that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show. So if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, tell them thank you. And go check out Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway, and find more information at greenelementresale.com. I'll read the address slowly. 6241 North Broadway. Head to Green Element Resale and save so much money. Listen to all that money we're saving. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
Yes, indeed. That super cool music means we're almost done, but we're not done yet. In fact, we have a new guest sitting in the studio, the legendary Maureen O'Donnell, obituary writer for the Chicago Sun-Times. I've always said the only good thing about dying is that maybe Maureen O'Donnell write your obituary.
Hi, Ben.
And welcome back, Maureen. She's a good friend of the show. Before I talk to her about some of the Chicagoans you should know about, folks, that's really why I do this, because there's some really great people. I always complain about the city of Chicago, Maureen. I'm always complaining about our mayor, our alderman, but there's some really wonderful people that live in the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
And
Unsung heroes.
Unsung heroes
Yeah.
in many cases. And in one case, we're going to talk about Michael Flug. I knew the man. But so many of them people I don't know, and I read about them. I learn about them when I read your stories, your profiles of them after they've died. And I was like, oh, dang. I wish I had met that person after I read Maureen's account of their life. Before we bring on Maureen on, D, you got an update for us?
Absolutely. First off, find us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on both Twitter and Facebook. Give us a like, follow, share, review, whatever you want to do. If you watch us on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like button, all that good stuff. Tell your friends. And also on Instagram, we're the Ben Joravsky Show. Ben's in charge of that one, so say hey to Ben over there. How's the Instagram page looking, by the way?
Booming.
Doing
booming.
good?
Yeah, me and social media, man.
So that's one update. And the other update, after nearly 7 hours, the Mueller hearings have concluded. Isn't that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
All right, that's correct. That's correct. So we got one more piece of audio here to play from the hearing number 2. It says here he was talking with, moments ago, Mueller said in response to a question from a Democratic congresswoman that it was, quote, generally fair to say that Trump's written answers were not always truthful. Oh, we're learning a lot here on this one today, huh? Let's hear from the testimony. Maybe. Here we go. Okay, anytime now.
Director Mueller, isn't it fair to say that the president's written answers were not only inadequate and incomplete because he didn't answer many of your questions, but where he did, his answers showed that he wasn't always being truthful?
I would say, generally.
Generally. Director Mueller, is one thing.
All right, there we go.
I'll tell you what a heck of a witness. Good. Say it. Declare something. State it. I agree 100% with David Ferris that Robert Mueller ducked and dodged and avoided and let the Republicans just pound away at him. It's sort of, he's not a Democrat, so I can't blame Democrats on him. But it kind of reminds me of the way the Democrats behave. The Republicans played to win, and Democrats play, I don't know what they do. They play to run around and lose weight. I don't know what they're even in doing. But Mueller acted like a Democrat up there. Well, I'm just going to let you beat me up, and I'm not going to defend myself or anything.
Robert Mueller, the Ben Joravsky Show said you ducked and dodged during the testimony. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, at least he agrees with me on that. All right, Maureen O'Donnell is not going to talk about Mueller at all. Instead, we're going to talk about somebody well worth remembering a really beautiful piece you wrote on Sunday about Michael Flug. Tell folks about Michael Flug.
Well, Michael Flug, I think, was somebody you should know, as TV reporter Harry Porterfield used to say. He was the senior archivist at the Woodson Library at 95th and Halsted. And that sounds like kind of a dry, sterile job, but he was responsible for many of the treasures in the second greatest repository of African-American memorabilia and documents and history in the nation. The Vivian Harsh collection, where he worked, is the second biggest collection of African-American historical treasures behind the Schomburg Library in New York City. And so, Michael, you could walk in there whether you were a grade school student or somebody researching your family genealogy, or Sarah Paretsky, a phenomenal best-selling mystery writer who was doing research for some of her books. It didn't matter who you were. Michael treated everyone with respect, according to friends and people who dealt with him. He treated all the treasures with respect, so that people like Timuel Black, the 100-plus historian, great historian in Chicago, they gifted their archives to him for posterity. And Michael would put on his archivist's gloves and go over and start leafing through treasures, and he knew where everything was. Boxes and boxes, hundreds of linear feet of personal writings, early stage manuscripts from Richard Wright and Langston Hughes, all the personal documents of Reverend Addie Wyatt, the longtime photographer for the Chicago Defender, Chester Commodore. He even had the collection of the man who invented Famous Amos cookies, Wally Amos of the chocolate chip empire. He had all of these things, and he would go through it when it was given to the Vivian Harsh collection, and he would create something that archivists call finding aids. So he'd write up what he found, and then you could go in and go, I'd like to know about when Wally Amos first got the idea for the chocolate chips. And he could go right to the correct box or drawer, open it up, boom, you had all your research. And he was, he was somebody that was really a VIP in the world of Black history. Juliana Richardson, who founded the History Makers website, which is a great, great website of oral histories. I think they have more than 10,000 at this point. Juliana Richardson said there was nobody like him. Paretsky thought the world of him and created a very able archivist in one of her books as an homage to Michael Flug. And in fact, there were African-American people who thought he was mixed race because of everything he knew and the respect he showed.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment. We live in very troubled, divisive times. Anybody who listens to this show, reads the newspapers, listens to the President of the United States, he's always trying for political ends to inflame hostilities between whites and blacks and exploit all these fears and prejudice and bigotry. When I read your obituary, your profile of Michael Flug, I just, in my mind, there was a contrast to what was going on the front pages of the paper, recounting what Donald Trump had been doing. This is a man, a white man, a Jewish guy from Brooklyn, who found his way to the south side of Chicago and dedicated his professional life to preserving Black history.
Yes.
And I don't think there was any evidence whatsoever that anybody, any Black person in the city of Chicago resented him in any way because he wasn't Black. In fact, he seemed, the appreciation for what he had done for his life's work was profoundly deep.
He had walked the walk. He and his wife, Suzanne French, told me that he'd been, as a teenager, he got in trouble in Brooklyn. He was, in the parlance of the day, he was in danger of becoming a juvenile delinquent. He actually appeared, I think, in court a few times, and he wound up, it may have been at the advice of a judge, but he wound up getting involved with CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. This was the group that was helped promote the Freedom Riders, and they held many, many sit-ins, protests for equal rights, for being able to sit at that lunch counter. And Michael Flug was in the thick of it in the bad old days. He got arrested 26 or 27 times. Once he got arrested, I think at one of the Carolinas, just for saying, brothers and sisters, I'm happy to be here. Boom, arrested. So many protesters from CORE got arrested that day. CORE didn't have the money to bail them out, so he spent 3 weeks in jail. He was involved in voter registration, and he said it was these were the things that made him very proud. And I think his father's side was from Poland by way of Iraq. His mother's side was also politically active, and It was a very loud dinner table. He said, his wife said that he was brought up thinking that the two political parties in the country were socialist and communist. And he felt sort of a kinship with oppressed people the world over. He absolutely loved vacationing in County Kerry, in the town of Dingle. It's this windswept peninsula that juts out into the wild Atlantic Ocean, and it was also the setting for a gorgeous 1970s movie called Ryan's Daughter. Really, it's a great movie, but the scenery is also a star. And he not only loved the scenery, but he felt sort of a kinship and knew a lot about Irish history and Ireland's effort to be a free sovereign nation, and he felt a kinship there. He could talk to anybody in a pub about Irish history, and he knew his stuff.
On a brief tangent, Maureen O'Donnell, for 10 trivia points, who is the director of Ryan's Daughter?
David Lean?
Stanley Kubrick.
Oh.
Stuff I know.
I'm not worthy.
Yeah,
That's a Kubrick film?
Yeah.
It's so warm and human.
Yeah. What a dig. All right, going back to Michael Flug.
I can't open the door, Hal.
No, that's 2001, A Space Odyssey. Yeah. By the way, I just saw The Shining. Did I talk to you about this? I saw The Shining. Oh, my God, it's run, don't walk to watch it again. It's just as good today as it was back in 1980 when it came out. All right.
I'm not a fan of that film, but that's another show.
Maureen O'Donnell. How could you not be a fan of The Shining?
I thought Jack Nicholson's performance ruined the film.
The words cannot get out of my mouth.
I'm not alone.
By the way, people don't know this about Maureen. She's a big movie buff, and something she shares with me. I think Nicholson was... You know, when I watched it again, here we are in a tangent with a tangent. I know we have to get back. Focus, Ben, focus. But I thought when I saw it again, which just recently, I was impressed by that scene that he has at the bar where it's an well, whatever. Anyway, I was impressed by his performance. Well, let's put that aside.
Okay.
And I know, will you be running out to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Is that on your list? Not
I don't
a Tarantino
know.
fan.
It's, that's a whole other show.
All right, another show. Maureen O'Donnell and Tarantino.
Although I know Richard Roper liked it.
Yes, and I will be seeing it tomorrow. All right, anyway, let's go back to Michael Flug. I remember I was one of the many people who came into the library looking for assistance at some point in the 90s, and you're absolutely correct. I was just a lowly guy writing for the Reader, and he treated me like I was a visiting scholar from Columbia or something. Very nice. Very helpful.
Yeah.
A wonderful guy, a great conversationalist, fun to talk to.
Yeah.
Had a New York accent. It was just he was a good person to know. But this is so hilarious that it was in your story that some people say, oh, he must be because he knew so much about Black history and Black culture. Oh, he must have been a light-skinned Black guy. There was just it's so Chicago.
And it wasn't just what he knew from the history books. He knew social strata. He knew the women in the links. He knew who was married to who. He knew who was formerly married to who. He knew layer upon layer upon layer of Chicago's movers and shakers for decades.
And he had that embedded. So people go, hey, it must be a light-skinned Black guy. I was like, what's that? It's Maureen O'Donnell. That is very Chicago in its world. So I urge everybody to check out the obituary to Michael Flug. Oh, and the other thing, this is the other thing about a Maureen O'Donnell profile. It's not just about the person's professional life. So in this case, he has this tremendous life as an archivist. Then she takes the deep dive, just takes a little tangent, if you will, about the person's personal life. And the thing at the end, the riff that you went on that I really enjoyed was his love for different kind of music. He loved Tina Turner.
Yeah. I'm jealous of him. He was very proud. He saw her in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Yeah, he had that string going.
Yeah.
Every decade he went and saw Tina Turner. After reading your story, I went and did my own article about him for the Reader, which I don't know if it's run yet. And I talked to his wife, and she was pointing out that he also liked country music. And he had this vast interest in opera. This great.
Well, that just goes to that equanimity he had. It didn't matter if you were a sixth grader or you were a visiting scholar from Yale. The Jacqueline Gouldsby from Yale and Davarian Baldwin from Trinity College in Hartford. All these extremely acclaimed, versatile professors said You know, he had the goods. He was a collaborator, not just a researcher.
What do you mean by that?
He helped them write their books. Don Hayner, a former top editor at the Sun-Times, has a book coming out this fall about a gentleman named Binga, the rise and fall of Chicago's first black banker. This could be a movie, this book. It's got everything. It's got a claim, it's got his downfall. And Don said he was very important to the research and the creation of that book, which he's been working on for years.
Well, that's one of the things about a librarian that I find very appreciative. They're some of the most generous people in the world because the librarians aren't going to get the credit for the product. The writer will get the credit. It's the writer's name. But the librarian, just by virtue of the job they have, they will help you. You're right. They will lead. You'll be your collaborator.
Yeah, the partner.
Yeah, they'll be your partner and help you lead you to the information you need to find.
And he's in a lot of forewords and in a lot of acknowledgments in books. And I had one of these weird things that happen to you in the universe. I went to a farmer's market in Evanston, and I walk up to one of the booths, and there's this poster that says R.I.P. Michael Flug. And I talked to the farmer. His name is John First. And I said, is this the Michael Flug who was the renowned researcher and archivist at the Carter-Woodson Library? And he said, yes. He said, Michael used to help me harvest my winesap apples. He loved winesap apples. So everyone has so many sides to them.
Yeah. Everybody has so many sides.
Yeah.
And another obituary that just broke today, I saw it when I was coming in today, Lois Willie, who's a legend among Chicago journalists. And I did not know Lois Willie. I knew who she was. She passed. She was about 87 years old. Talk a little bit about the legacy of Lois Willie.
Well, Lois was someone who, as a child, her parents were always kind of quizzing her and expecting her and her brother to excel in school. Grew up in Arlington Heights. Her dad was from Germany. He fled pre-Hitler Germany as things were starting to heat up there. He was an architect, rebuilt his life in Arlington Heights by becoming a bricklayer, eventually had his own business. Her mother was also a woman of letters. She didn't work outside the home, but she was up on all current events. And Lois wanted to break into newspapers. She went to Northwestern University, and she got a job at the Daily News working for Peg Zwecker, the fashion editor, head of the women's section, and also discoverer of the designer Halston, who epitomized the graceful ease of the 1970s.
Whoa.
With his caftans, was a regular at Studio 54, rubbing shoulders with Bianca Jagger and Marisa Berenson and Ryan O'Neal. And Mrs. Zwecker found him designing hats, I think, at a little atelier in Chicago. And
you know a lot about Zwecker.
I think I'm sort of a frustrated fashion writer. And
that whole riff you went on was very
She was an amazing woman. It was Mrs. Zwecker. She was the mother of Bill Zwecker, wife of, I think, a count or baron from Europe who also fled to get away from the Nazis. And Mrs. Zwecker was a great sort of inspirer of women. So Lois worked for her, and as soon as she could, she segued over to the main newsroom, away from the women's section. I believe she was one of two women in the newsroom at a time when Lois gave an interview to something called Chicago Women's Leaders. She said at the time, a lot of the men had a bottle of whiskey in their desk. There was a lot of overindulging. It was routine for men to throw garbage cans, throw typewriters, get into arguments and fistfights, and go away for a few days to recover from a bender. And it was all acceptable. But she kind of segued in there and decided to kind of go under the radar and just rise by excellence. Mike Royko said she had no flaws. She could report. She could write. She could write editorials. She could analyze. There, in the interview with the Chicago Women's Business Leaders, Lois got asked about a comment from Mike Royko. They were both covering the Our Lady of Angels fire in 1958, which killed 98 school children and 3 nuns and changed fire codes across the nation. And apparently, Pat was so busy and so resourceful She was bobbing around interviewing parents, firefighters, victims. Royko thought that there were like 7 or 8 women reporters running around. That's how adept she was. And so she rose through the Sun-Times, the Tribune, the Chicago Daily News. She won not 1, but 2 Pulitzers. Great investigative reporter. In 1963, doctors at Cook County Hospital could not tell women about contraceptives. That, you know, if women had had a number of children or they had health problems and they wanted to know about birth control, you know, if she said, "Is there any way I can avoid getting pregnant again?" they had to refuse to answer her. So Lois Willie looked into this, and she couldn't get very far with it because the hierarchy, the editorial hierarchy, was largely made up of Roman Catholic men. But according to Lois, in an interview that she gave to Washington Press Club, she said she'd wanted to write about this problem for a long time, but it wasn't until her editor developed stomach ulcers and a deputy editor, Bob Rose, filled in, and he said, "Run with it." And within 3 months after her birth control series, the Illinois Public Aid Commission agreed to pay for birth control for women.
Yeah, that was a great contribution she made. 1963, a much different time than it is now. So Lois Willie, a legend in Chicago journalism. When I moved to town, Maureen, I remember she was at the Daily News back then, and she was one of these. I was a lowly copy boy, and there were people like Royko and Lois Willie, you know, hanging around. I'd be like watching them in awe and everything. And she did also a lot of stories about the lake,
yes,
and the need to keep development off the lake.
Yes, she wrote a book, Forever Open and Free, about the need to keep it open, to keep Daniel Burnham's plan intact. And Anne Marie Lipinski, who used to be the top editor at the Tribune, and she's now the head of the Neiman Foundation at Harvard, she said she managed to look at these hard stories with gimlet-eyed view of what to do to make things right, but she would wrap everything in writing filled with compassion and grace. So, and people say, there's a former copy boy on Facebook today saying she always had a smile for us, you know, and people don't forget that. Yeah.
That is Lois Willie we're talking about. These are some classic stories that Maureen O'Donnell has written. I'd like to bring her on to talk about them from time to time. Lois Willie one, it was just the one that popped up today, but Michael Flug, urge everybody to go check that out. F-L-U-G. Michael Flug just passed away. To me, the story I wrote, he's the anti-Trump. His whole life is dedicated to really good and important things, building a better understanding relationship between blacks and whites. You couldn't ask for a more important issue in our country today. Michael Flug passed away. How old was he? 70?
He was in his 70s, a little over 75.
75.
Yeah.
Too young.
Yeah.
Anyway, Maureen O'Donnell, thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
Thank you for having me.
And twist her arm and get her to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And next time she comes on,
we'll argue about movies.
We'll argue about movies. I'm looking forward to that one. I'll defend The Shining for years to come. Maureen O'Donnell is my guest in the studio now. Also want to thank Monroe Anderson. He stops by every Wednesday. And David Ferris from Roosevelt University, political scientist. Check out his book, It's Time to Fight Dirty. Leah did a great job, as she always did. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend behind the board, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Maureen O'Donnell will tell you, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/pages/Joravsky, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. We're on Spotify. Tell your friends. Follow us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show on both Facebook and Twitter, The Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram. And hey, downloaders, we live stream this show Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Reader websites and Chicago Sun-Times websites and the Sun-Times YouTube channel.